Okay, I have audio. Audio is showing. Good job. Mic is on. Camera 1 is on. Let me know, guys, when you can hear me. Let me know when you can hear me. And we might as well start recording. And let's head over to here. Here. Okay, audio and image, everything's working. Okay, great. Okay, a couple of things to note. If you're not at the page, it is anatomy-live-room. And so the reason why I mentioned that is because some people said they experienced better playback, I guess, here. And then just a couple of notes. So if you encounter buffering, refresh the page, okay? I am a little screwed. I'm doing this from office Wi-Fi. I do not have a dedicated Ethernet port here in the studio. I didn't really think I was ever going to do this. So anyways, right now I'm a little screwed, but it seems to be working. And then the other thing is I am streaming at 1280 by 720. So that's going to be a little low res. But don't worry, because I actually have recordings at the full HD. So this is actually recording on OBS at HD, and then I'm just about to turn on record on the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, and so that records literally all the cameras and everything else as well. And then also the last thing is that the replay, we had some experiences with buffering yesterday. The replay doesn't appear to have suffered at all. So we went through, like people couldn't see after I opened Photoshop, but literally all of that was captured inside of the port. So let's switch over here to my face, and you still hear me with my face. So let's be audio check, just type in audio check. We're gonna go and do it from the other camera here shortly as well. I gotta look at the camera. And so we stopped at Photoshop, it was all there. So the key thing is, we need to cut, and that needs to cut faster. 0.5. Just refresh the page. Refresh the page. If my audio drops, let me know in the comments, because the mic will have closed or will have shut down, which it shouldn't. It's 15-hour battery life, but it had 15 hours yesterday, still shut down. So now, what else do we need to talk about? Yes, so otherwise, I am watching comments, and today I'm actually streaming from my Mac, working on my PC. So hopefully we don't have the buffering issues, because I lowered the resolution and I'm streaming from an entirely separate computer. So all of this is just coming in as data. But the Mac it has the best specs I could get. And so that MacBook is streaming, but I'm on Wi-Fi. That's my problem. All right, and again, I'm sorry, but I think it was worth it so that you guys got to see my studio. You can say, where is it? Leakwan back there. You can see Lanteri over here, right? And we get to switch the camera, and you get to see my studio, or part of my studio actually, on the other side. So let me go over there and just make sure. There you go. Now you're seeing my other studio. Just give me another audio check to make sure that we're good there. So you should see, yeah. Why'd that take a moment? Oh, because I'm not on OBS. 1 second. Rookie error. I got my screen mirrored, but it's looking at YouTube, which is not the one you guys see. All right, so we're in my studio now. We've got my marble Audi. That is, there's the camera. And I need to be positioned right here. Good. And then this is just this It's a kind of a breakthrough piece for me. I don't think it's going to go anywhere necessarily. There's a whole series of mythical characters, storytelling involved in it. So we'll see if I decide to take this further, but this one has been the real test that there might be something new in sculpting, a new way to think about things and a new way to kind of approach it, which involves, 3D printing at scale, right? I mean, that's more than life size. Well, it is kind of, ain't life size for me. This is Michael. This is much bigger. And so, here we got this guy. What can we do with 3D printing to help us create or bring our digital dreams into reality? Because I've been in digital world for a really long time, and 20 years. Lord of the Rings, like right after Lord of the Rings, let me put this down. Right after, that's my NAS. Right after Lord of the Rings, I joined ZBrush, Pixelogic, to work on ZBrush 2's transition to ZBrush 3, and I worked there all the way until 3.5. Building, working, my rake brush is there, although I don't recommend it anymore because the settings changed. You got to change the settings a little bit. Sculpted Demo Soldier. Wasn't the model I wanted. It's just me playing with something, and Ofer picked that. Demo Soldier, the naked soldier dude. Again, it wasn't my choice, but it was my creation. And then so my anatomy figure also ships inside of ZBrush as well. You can see it, the Kingslien anatomy figure in there, which I would love to up-res. It was really low-res for the times. Anyways, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's important for me now to just get this out of that world, like bring it into the real world in some way or another. Now also I am in my studio here at X-Space. X-Space is not a sound-free environment. I got people doing construction upstairs. I got people working car wash over here that play music sometimes. We have cars drive back and forth here and their tires squealing. So you're gonna hear some extra noise. Hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully we can do more of these. But the noise, I'm a little sensitive to it. So we're going to talk about torso today, but give me 1 second. I need my phone so I can make sure that you guys are all hearing me and there's no problems. So let's go day 2. We're live. Turn the volume down. All right, there we go. Then, no, that finished printing a while ago. I got a whole mess of them over in the corner, right? Malim, could you share which 3D printer you use? It's in my Instagram, my friend. You can see all the prints. It's the Gigastorm, orange Gigastorm from Elegoo. $2,500. I mean, I was looking at printers before. I talked to people before. I didn't get prices below, I got prices around $100,000, right? And there's no way. That's crazy land. Because once you buy a machine for that much money, you're now a slave to that machine. That machine needs to be working. It needs to pay itself back. I didn't want to be a slave to anything. I have a $5,000 Shapeoko that, I need to get rid of at this point. $5,000 is too much for me to spend. And the 3D printer does everything I need. And I don't have to worry about undercuts. It just prints everything. Exactly. Now, if I want to turn this into a production model, I throw clay over the top to get the surface I want, and make a mold, and it goes in something I can sell. All right. So Liz in Load is saying no issues. Valerio De Santos, torso will be good challenge. Ven Sculpt's cheaper than modern ZBrush license. Guess who's back again? Hey, how you going? Leroy Brown. All right, so let's go check in. Okay, we're in good shape. All right, today we talk torso. I have an armature over here. I got this bad boy over here that we might work on, and yikes. And what we need to talk about, one is a little recap of what we discussed yesterday, which is the proportional system based on masses, right? And so when we look at this is the core of the torso. We're missing the head, which is the really big piece of it that we talked about yesterday. But what we really want to make sure that we have in our bones is what is the proportion of the rib mass? What is the proportion of the pelvis mass, right? So does anybody remember what that rib height is from bottom to top? And remember, these are not hard and fast rules, okay? They plus or minus some, like don't get caught into the trap of being perfect, right? You can go through the history of proportions, the history of drawing and painting and fine art, traditional art. Everybody stretched, right? You can go and get really detailed proportional stuff. You see Durr, wow. You look at his proportional stuff, just crazy the way that he kind of built that. But when you get into starting to do more dynamic stuff, all bets are off. Things shift and move. The rib cage, people would tell me in the early days, they'd say the rib cage is an immovable mass. And that doesn't make sense, because if it's an immovable mass, how are you breathing? So your rib cage will expand. It'll deflate. As you rotate, if you go like this part is going to compress inwards while this part is expanding, right? So there is movement within the rib cage itself. But as a fine artist, as a traditional artist, how do we say this? As a sculptor, you just need to have this ideal version of the mass. So, does anybody got, what is it? Yeah, 1.75 from C7 to the bottom of the rib cage, which should be the 10th rib. As it rotates around, it's going to come down here a little bit. And remember, two fingers in between the bottom of your rib cage and the pelvis. And remember, almost all skeletons, you could buy a $1,000 skeleton online. Almost all skeletons will be wrong because the rib cage has mass hanging from it in a living being. Our external obliques, our abs, fascia. Fascia, you have to understand fascia, right? So I can give you a simple example to understand fascia. Grab a cord. I use my dog leash like this. Try to put this behind you, right? Like that. Okay, so I'm 52 years old. Now, about a year ago, I just had neck pain. I had, this is going somewhere, trust me. Neck pain, I had shoulder pain, and it was because I spent most of my day right? And so shoulders are hunched. Most importantly, though, and this is the thing people miss, your distance from here to your pubic symphysis, that is shortened, right? So here, and now I'm going to shorten that, and I'm bending down, right? And so as I bend down, the abs, they actually get used to being shrunk like that, and they shrink. Your fascia, everything shrinks. And then so it takes time to lift that back up and to stretch the fascia so that you actually sit upright like, a healthy human being. And this exercise, where you take your hands like this and you try to put this behind your back, if you can't do this, this is the one thing you have to do. You have to do immediately, right? pause this and try it. Because that if you can't, it means your shoulders are compressed, your pectoralis has shortened, and your abs have shortened. And that's going to cause you carpal tunnel. There's a bunch of things that are going to come out of that. It's getting hot in here. All right, a little bit of exercise and I'm already sweating. So anyways, width. What's the width? What's the depth? All right, so it's going to be 1 head deep, 1.25 heads this way, thereabouts. The pelvis mass, it's going to be about 1 head here, roughly 1 head if you include the junk in the trunk, but the junk in the trunk, I mean, you go back and forth, right? So somebody could have no butt, it's going to be less. Somebody could have a lot of butt, you're going to have more. It's a movable mass, so you just have to kind of go with it, all right? Now, in the figure, how are we doing actually? Can you guys still hear me? Yes, and as Rick says, this is all based on 8 heads. So check what we said yesterday, what we did yesterday. That replay is available on YouTube, and this is all 8 head because 8 head is easier to teach, to communicate. And so if you want something different, like we can do it, you can do it, you can modify it, you can learn it. Richer is 7.5. Lanteri, I have Lanteri. Lanteri is like 7. Humans are the whole scale. 8 is the easiest to remember. All right, so now, when we work through this today, and in the figure sculpting class that's coming up, and that we'll actually preview in the live class that opens tomorrow, we start with massing. And that's exactly what we did yesterday in the live classes. We basically 1.75, 1.2, 1, and we massed this in, all right? So that is available for you guys right now, and it'll be available all week until Monday. After that, you'll have to be in the class for it. So massing is one of the most important things to understand. And then once you are done with massing, there are other phases that we have to do, right? And they look very different. These are very different looking phases. You can't do this phase without this phase. The one thing I will say, though, is that if you watch a master sculptor work, mastery is not magic. You may have heard me say that before. It's process. But the process of achieving mastery is collapsing steps. So the reason why a master looks so effortless to you, to me, is because their effort is very efficient. Okay? And this is in everything. This is you playing the violin, you're building a house, you're making a porch, you're sculpting, you're painting. If somebody has mastery, their work looks more effortless to us because it's more efficient. It's more efficient because they are collapsing a stack of tasks, right? So they don't have to, build the rib cage, build the pelvis, build the booty, right? Put in this little intersecting piece for the mass of the shoulder. They don't have to put the cylinder of the arm in anymore. They don't have to put it in because it's in their mind. And now that's stored there forever. I teach different than I actually sculpt, and that's because when I actually sculpt, more steps are like they're just happening automatically. This is a step that I don't do either when I'm pushing through to make something. I put pieces of it in, but I crush through this as quick as possible so I can get to the next phase, which we're going to talk about in a second. This phase is much more planar, right? Let me see if I got a pen here. I'm going to risk drawing on this. Yeah, it shows up. All right. So in this one, we're much more interested in very specific planar structures. All right. So one of the things to keep in mind is that you're still going to establish your ASIS. You're going to still establish these points. Okay. You're still going to establish, and let's just put this down, pit of the neck. When you establish pit of the neck, in my class, you're going to also establish clavicles. The pit of the neck is actually 3 bony landmarks, and I think we talked about this yesterday. Then we're going to pull out a little line for the flat part of the clavicle. And this is really maybe a little hard to see, but if I get closer, it's not in focus. From this, we're going to then go and find the 8th rib. I'm going to put the 8th rib right here, okay? And that's not the only place where the 8th rib is. It drops down a little bit. But let's say from a side view, that's the most forward projection, so that's going to be our 8th rib. Okay, and then we'll find the pubic symphysis down here. And let me make these nice and big for you guys. I'll probably have to print this again, but it's like $20. I think that's doable. Okay. From this grid of bony landmarks, we can do a lot, okay? We can start to think about this arch of the rib cage. But the arch of the rib cage isn't going to be that important for us yet. I'm just putting it in to kind of show you guys a couple of things. Let's do the bowl of the belly, right? Let's put the acromial process. I'm going to do something else, though. I'm going to basically grid this out where we go from ASIS to the 8th rib in a straightish line. And then we're going to go from ASIS and we're going to go to this last part. I was not expecting to draw on this, so hopefully I don't screw this up. Let's get our midline in to C7. Our belly button should be about right there. And then the lights in this thing. Hello? I can't get these lights to stay on. I have to pay an electrician to do this. This represents essentially the front, right? That's the front versus the side. This is what you want. You want to be able to see planes in the body, and you want to have landmarks that anchor you and that give you a specific point in which to say, all right, you exist in space, the rest of you goes this way, the rest of you is coming down this way, right? And that's what this does. Knowing the 8th rib, knowing ASIS, this helps us establish, the curvature of that in space. So here we are facing it going this direction. That. So flat, transitioning. Okay? And that's going from ASIS to 8th rib to just this side of the clavicle. And you can feel this yourself in your own clavicle. You just go, whoops, I'm just touching the mic. You go right there and then follow it out. And then somewhere it's going to sweep backwards. In my case, it's about right there. So we go here to basically the nipple, to the 8th rib, to ASIS, and that is the front plane of the body separated from the side plane of the body. What do you think of that? You ever seen that taught? All right, let me take a look. Okay. Audio's good. Listening in from the shrimp position. Jost, I can answer that question later. I can answer questions about what is opening tomorrow. I can do that later. Right now, let's focus on just learning. How's the stream, guys? Has there been any buffering? Yeah, I agree with you, Melina. That didn't affect us much, so I won't worry about it. It's off right now. 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, good. Yes, perfect. All right, great. It's lower resolution, so supposedly that's going to be better. But when this rolls into the class, I'll have the HD version. All right. Today we're learning about the torso. We're learning about rhythm. We're learning about all of that stuff. It all starts by understanding this really important grid. Now, as we go through onto the side of it, there's a whole grid that we can start to think about. But what I'm going to do instead is focus just here on the back and start to talk about the structures of the back, so to speak. What is really, I love, and I don't even know where I learned this, so it actually could be all hooey, it could be wrong, but my understanding that old Greek sculptors called the front of the body Apollonian, for the god of reason, for sense, sanity, sensible structure, linear structure. All right, and you see that. You see a line going straight up. You see an arch, right? You see actually an arch down here. You see an upside down arch down here. You see nice straight columns, okay? And you can go a step further and you can say that this entire, because this is how I like to do pectoralis. I like to do pectoralis as though they are this square with a wedge, right? So if we look, see one square, one wedge. But really you're looking at the top of a column. You're looking at the pediment, I think. Pediment's the bottom, something's on the top. You're looking at the top of a column. And that's rational. Structure, we understand it. You look at the back, it don't make any sense. You move a little tiny bit and like something's revealed and you're like, what is that? Where'd that come from? I got no idea, right? And I study the back and half the time I have no idea. So we have a fix for that. It's called the walnut stage. But we're going to worry about the walnut stage in a sec. Right now what we're going to do is look at this and say, like, is there anything we can do to make sense out of crazy? And of course, yes, there is. So one, you're going to locate C7. Okay, C7 right there, top. C7 you can locate on yourself. It's super easy. You just put your hand behind and you're looking for the bone that's most prominent. So you can kind of go down your neck and then you're going to get to this thing that's sticking out, and the spine on C7 is pretty massive spine. So it overlaps the first thoracic and all the thoracic ribs after that. So it's just the first thing you encounter, that's going to be C7. And so that's going to be, it's a little bit lower, but let's just put it right here for now. Now we're going to go, the back I have to practice a lot more because this shit's nuts. Okay, so we need to come down. We're just going to do our midline right here. And then right here, we're going to find a very important structure. This is going to be the sacrum. The sacrum is going to have two little lines coming out of it, and this is right where the dimples of Venus come from. Okay, and then down from here, roughly, you're going to have the sacrum and then the coccyx, which is going to go deeper in there, right? The coccyx is your tail, because you were a monkey at some point. Some days more than others, but in the past, a lot more. And the coccyx is your tail, still there. Little tiny bits, right? Hidden in between our butt cheeks. So now, from here, on top of the sacrum, you have these two little elements. These are, they're the ends of the ilium, right? And so, from ASIS, you guys remember from last? Remember? You can put two fingers in here. Remember, your ASIS is down here. Then your ilium flows up here. And try this on yourself, on a friend with consent, and you will be surprised at how far your pelvic bone is up into your body. It's crazy. I still don't quite, like, it still is weird to me. But anyways, so that is here and it's flowing up. And most people think, well, hey, there's a line right there. That line is the end, and it's not true. The ilium will go up into that fat pad more, possibly lots more. In fact, actually lots more from what I have. So this is going to be, we'll screw up this side. Yeah, so I think it's off a little bit, but we're going to go with this halfway, and then we're going to go over, and yeah, I got to drop it down, but there's no arrays in life. So this line right here, this is going to be something that really helps us. Okay, and we're going to go from these two lines. These, just like in the back, how we had the ASIS, lead us up to 8 to the nipple to the top of the clavicle. And to the straight part of the clavicle. We're going to actually be able to take these guys right here, and we're going to go right to the ends of the scapula. This is the medial border of the scapula. We're going to take a line straight up. Okay? And then we got our knife blade of the scapula. Let's just draw the little scapula in here with a little triangle at the top. And then from this point, we can kind of make a line up to our scapula. Yeah. So that right there, that represents the flat plane. And that flat plane, you can see, I'm not wobbling it too much. That's a flat plane. And then as soon as I break off of that line, the plane changes. Let me see if I can show it. So here we're flat, here we're changing. I'm looking at the TV here to make sure I got that right. Now, come on. What are you guys doing to my lights? Let me know if this gets too dark. I think actually this works. Gives some nice mood light to this. So anyways, we got this established. Now, what else can we do, right? So for the side plane, we take right about halfway. Here to here, halfway. And we can take that line straight up. Almost entirely just straight up, a little bit back. So let's go here. And then essentially what you're having is you're just having this kind of angled plane in between. See that? So yes, there's a whole lot of crazy, but at the end of the day, if you can start to find a grid that makes sense, right? And not only that, if you can find the repeating patterns that we talked about. So if you remember in the front, we have the pectoralis as a block that goes into a wedge, right? And you'll see in my videos that I do this fairly frequently, and I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. The pectoralis is a cube with a little tail of a wedge coming into the arm. That mirrors in the back, right? Just how yesterday we talked about how there's 1, 2, 3 masses for the torso, okay? There's 1, 2, 3 masses for the arm. There's 1, 2, 3 for the leg. Evolution reuses systems, always. The scapula is a box at an angle, arguably. And at the end of that box, a little bit of an inverted shape as it's coming down in here. Maybe. Isn't that crazy? You can look at it from the side view and go from spine to spine. And that actually sets you up with straight, curved. Here, let's do it this way. Straight, curved, or angled. If you know the bones, if you know these simple structures, then you're going to be able to make, you're going to be able to kind of go crazy and start to build things, things that, like, at the end of the day, you might look at this and you might say, like, wow, hey, there's like a little bump here. What's this bump? What's this bump? What's going on here, right? I don't know, okay? Just like here, you're looking and you're like, I see ab, okay, but then what's that? What's this form? Here, there's actually 1, 2, 3. There's multiple forms down here, okay? Up here, there's actually multiple forms. Look at all of it, all of these little chestnuts, these little walnuts of form, all wrapping right there. All of that stuff is important. But, let's check here. Okay, good. Side shave Laura. We do live in the matrix. Okay. Okay, all right. All this is important, all right, but this is what beginners go to first, because this is what you see. In fact, this stage is an exaggeration of what's actually there. Let me set this one down. This is a smaller version of it. And so in this one, you have the same thing where you have like all these walnuts of form, all these little tidbits, right? And then those tidbits, I finished sculpting it. So I went from planar, and this is all in the upcoming class, and it's all what we're going to do in the live class. The live class is a preview of the figure sculpting that launches in February. We created the planes. We added in all the crazy walnuts, and our job here was just to observe and find weird stuff, right? Which is it's the first thing a beginning sculptor does, is they just go and they find all the weird stuff, right? And then we resolved it into actual form. This is not the scan, and it is different than the scan in that I kind of pushed form a little bit, and I gave more roundness and convexity to things. And that's because convexity is life for a sculptor. And so I wanted to have a lot more life and vitality, to it. That's what the Greeks really taught us. And it's what the modernists lost, right? So you go from Rodin, who's at the edge. He's introducing more flat surfaces, Rodin is. And then you have Bordel, who's like, it's just, bleh. And then you have Henry Moore, where it's just, straight, right? Or curved or whatnot. But we lost the vitality, which arguably I understand. You have to remember, modern sculpture came out of World War II. World War II was the death of reason in large part, right? It's like nobody had seen that many people killed. And so what does reason mean? Everybody thinks that their side is right and everybody's dying. And so art really, I don't think, could grapple with that. And still it's hard to grapple with. So form basically was, what does Yeats say? His song, Slouching to Bethlehem, something about the gyre. Oh, I'll have to find it. But form became unhinged from beauty and from idea, which, hell, I understand, okay? But it's a different time now, and I'm interested in form being hinged back up with beauty, with some sense of meaning, and building meaning back into life and into work. And so, art is life, life is art, right? Just means this has more vitality than the scan. I pushed and pulled a couple of forms, all right? But if we get back to the main crux, beginning sculptors do this without being able to do this. And so what that means is that they built a house and it has no foundation, it doesn't have any load-bearing walls, and it just simply crashes down. Because that's what happens when you don't have a foundation. And the foundation is planes. Planes aren't straight. It's just a relatively cohesive plane. They can be curved. In my experience with this, making them flat and planar is actually counterproductive. It really just misses the point. But being able to make a relatively consistent curve for this part of the pectoral mass, that is hugely valuable. Because then later on you look at that relatively consistent curve and you're like, hey, the muscle mass is higher here. And that teaches you something. You now get to learn like, oh, actually the pectoralis wastes away in the center, in everybody, bodybuilders. You know, the mass accumulates with the pectoralis minor, with the muscle fibers out here. And it takes a good bit of work to actually get those muscle fibers to move this direction, to bulk up in this direction. It takes very specific exercises that you don't normally do. And it takes a certain practice where you have to actually like focus on the muscles. You have to really just say, okay, try to get the twitch to happen earlier, right? People who've worked out, you start to at a certain point try to have the muscle flex, activate, fire is the word. Have the muscle fire from a particular position to help build it up, right? So this is the problem that we face in sculpting. Beginners go here, you need to go here. If you can't make this, boring as it may be, you will never make this. It's a law as true as gravity. Maybe you stumble upon it, right? So I had somebody leave a comment on Instagram talking about insertions and origins, and they said, I don't learn insertions and origins, I'm just going to use my intuition. And I get that. But it's pretty simple. The breakdown of this is pretty simple. Intuition is not a mystery. We know what intuition is. Intuition is pattern recognition based on lived experience. It means somehow you have intuited, you have recognized this pattern before. Reading about it, living through it, maybe something in your culture exposes you to it, but it's pattern recognition based on experience. You have to live through, you have to have that experience. And so there's this great dialogue Plato wrote called Meno, which is Socrates demonstrating how an uneducated slave knows basic geometry. Okay, and so an uneducated slave could have enough lived experience to understand basic geometry. Cool. Does that mean that your intuition is going to help you build rockets? No, because you cannot accumulate enough lived experience to be intuitive about rocket science. At least not yet. Maybe 200 years, our kids' rocket science will be like basic geometry. And they'll be like, yes, we already know that, this, that. But right now, no. So if that uneducated slave wants to build rockets, that uneducated slave is going to have to get educated because they don't have enough lifespan to figure it out, much less capital, money, all that stuff. So you can intuit anything you want. You just have to know that you're shooting yourself in the foot, maybe both feet. And so the solution is to learn and then let go. Learn and let go. And that's what these two phases are. This is the learn, we push. And then when I teach this phase, those who were in the last live class will tell you, this is unhinged from anatomy. It's kind of informed by it, But our primary job here isn't to be like, why is the pectoralis doing that? That's how you do it wrong. Why is the pectoralis? Why has it got 1, 2, 3 bumps in there? What's the rib cage doing here? Like, what's going on? Not to mention you come into the back, right? And I can explain all of this because I learned, right? So there's these lines that come here on both sides of this. Well, that's because this part is actually 2 muscles. This is the longissimus, has muscle fibers connecting to the ribs, and then the iliocostalis has muscle fibers connecting to the ribs. They separate. So in the back, you'll see it's not just one muscle that goes, they kind of create these like weird bumps where they're offset like that. And you're like, what is that? My teacher told me that's the erector spinae. No, it's not the erector spinae. That's the group name. That's like saying quads. The erector spinae is the multifidus, the longissimus, the iliocostalis, right? But you can still sculpt realistic without knowing every single muscle. And it's important that you not know. That you not know. And that you have a system that works for not knowing. Because there's always going to be something you don't. Right? There's this great sculptor, Justin, I forget his name, his last name, ridiculously beautiful work, right? And so he's got a bunch of MRIs or X-rays showing that he has this muscle that nobody else has, right? Crazy things happen. Your system has to allow for the fact that you don't know everything. And so this is your learn, this is your let go. When you come in here, you just create what we call walnuts, what I call walnuts. And so this comes off of a diss from Leonardo da Vinci. So Leonardo da Vinci at some point wrote to Michelangelo, basically said, your drawings look like a bag of walnuts. And it's actually kind of true when you understand what that concept means. Not only does it look, can you see the little walnuts of form? They're masterfully structured, of course. But you might get a sense that was actually a training component. And we're going to look, hopefully we'll be able to find the guy who did that to the extreme, an engraver that did it to the extreme. But walnuts and little buckets of form, you'll actually start to see these more and more in the Renaissance drawings. You'll see them in Del Sarto. You'll see them not in Cambiasso. Cambiasso was focused on somebody else. He was more towards the Enlightenment. Titian, I don't think we have a lot of drawings. You'll see it in Raphael. You see it in Michelangelo, where they have these little nuggets of form. Just a little round form that comes up. You see it everywhere in the Sistine Chapel because he invented so much of that, right? So this is what we really, in my view, what we want to talk about today more than anything else is for you to understand how the patterns lead into, the meaning making and starting to figure things out. I think that, does that work for you guys? So let's head over into the computer. And we're already at 47 minutes. And I forgot to hit record from the ISOs. So there we go. Okay, I think we can leave this. Okay, and voila. Okay, are we looking at ZBrush? Okay, and we are definitely streaming at a higher rate, so we are looking good. Let me look through comments real quick. Everything seems to still be intact. I don't see any big problems. Yeah, I can't believe it's all working out. Okay. No, 1 second. Juiced, So first we make the planes and then the nuts to interrupt them. Yes, sir. It is a new way of teaching, yes. And we definitely did nuts last session. There was a whole week on nuts. This feels so weird to say that. Does the 10th rib serve as a landmark for any of the frontal plane? 10th rib, no. 8th rib is the landmark. One second, guys. Okay, one sec. Okay, just going through the comments, making sure we're good here. We could have the Ryan cam as I'm sitting here reading. Right, juiced, yeah. You were in the session before. Got it. And then Ricardo, are you going to exemplify anatomy on pose with movement? I think I understand what you're saying. Are we going to do movement? I'm undecided. Undecided. And Liz Lynn, awesome. Okay, all right. Let's get ourselves into ZBrush. So I am going to, let's see, where is that file? The quick saves, I don't want to capture those. That's a neutral model that is in working torso. Okay. Yes, figure sculpting 1, working torso. Okay, cool. Let's go. Let's see if we can find it. Is my NAS working? No, let's not worry about that right now. Okay. Let's do structure 3. Come on there, big boy. Yeah, all right. And let's see if we've got all of the structure. So that is our scan. So let's go transform. I'm going to turn solo off and split on. So that's going to be the scan. Let's turn all of these off. Perfect. All right, and then so now, come on. That's the structure. So that's the 3D print that you guys saw. And, oh, how do I turn that off? Sorry, guys. ZBrush. Anybody know? Let me know. ZBrush, turn off. Auto. Hide model on rotate. Dynamic solo. Wow. I had to turn dynamic off even though I wasn't in solo. Woo! That would have confused the hell out of me. And this is not right. So let's see if we can get it right. So you are right there. Let's go new document, because I think my scale is different. There we go. Better. All right. So we've got our scan on the left. We've got the volume that you've already seen here. Now we're going to switch. This is when we go in and we do the planar construction. And one of the things that I think is really kind of important to note about this, is this the planar or is this the planar? That's a little bit more development. And then we get the chestnuts. Yeah. Okay, let's go here. I'm going to go transform and turn this off, and let's hide these guys. and I'm going to show this and this. All right, so as I drew earlier, this becomes the landmarks, the points, right? So let's go, yeah, we're in great shape. Can I draw? No, let me start Epic Pen. Right, so earlier we did this. 8th rib down to your ASIS. And that was basically the flat, okay? So that's the first, a really important rhythmic element to understand. And that rhythmic element comes from the bony landmarks. So if you come in here and we look at the actual scan data, you'll see that these are directly matching. That's a fleshy, there's a xiphoid, but this is 7, 8th rib, on from there. And that structure works. Then we learn other little tidbits of form, like, for example, the pectoralis is a block with a wedge. So these all translate into the real world and into our understanding of the figure. We may want to try a dynamic pose today just so we can kind of stress test this, but I wanted to make sure that you guys saw this practically. So I'm pointing to where they are. The two cameras are right opposite each other. And here inside of ZBrush. And so now if we come back to our ZBrush camera, the strategy for us, let's stay on solo mode, is to understand the planes and then to convert those planes into some more structure. So it's this phase to this phase, and then there's a modeling phase that we're going to look at. So we need to be able to understand at this point, what's going on? Yeah, let's go ahead and duplicate this. And I'm going to turn these guys off. When we're looking at this, what are some of the most important things that we need to understand in order to start to make sense out of a torso? Let me see, I'm going to probably spend 20 minutes here on this one. I'm going to try to spend 20 minutes on this one, and then I'm going to try to freeform this and spend more time kind of trying to make sense out of something a little bit less structured, right? So let's do 20 minutes taking this planar to structure to walnuts to finished form as much as we can, and then we'll do 20 minutes more freeform and whatnot. Let me start the record, see if that works. Does that work for you guys? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, dynamic. Just looking through the comments. I've seen you use a rake brush to get an idea of gesture and form. I was curious how you... Hopefully we get to this question today about the rake brush for gesture and all of that. Okay. All right, let's get ourselves back in ZBrush. So I'm going to now establish structure. What do I need to know? I need to know, we already talked about this, I need to know rib cage. I need to know pelvis, the mass for this, and the mass for this. But on top of that, what is structure? Do you guys know what structure is, what the definition is for structure? Structure is the relationship between parts. So when we look at the rib mass, we're not going to look just at the rib cage. Of course, there's the rib cage. We're going to look at the pectoral mass. We're going to look at the lat mass, right? And then as we roll around into the back, there's the scapula, there's the trapezius, right? There's different massing elements that we need to focus on. If we look at the pelvis, we're going to look at, let's say the belly mass. Some of us got a lot of belly mass. We deserve to have our belly mass treated appropriately, okay? Then there's going to be, when we talk about the pelvis mass, sometimes it goes into muscles because they're just so dominant, and then the glutes, okay? So when we deal with structure, and we start entering, so we've moved from planar to structure. I'm spending time here because this is actually the training, right? Everybody looks at the details. This is the training. You go from planar into structure. You have to have multiple parts because structure is about the relationship between parts. We didn't put in here the in-between. There's the ribs, there's the pelvis. What's in between them? There's the external obliques, right? And so that's a mass that we have to structure as well. But the job from plane to structure is now you have to have a checklist. And please copy this down, screenshot this. Build your own checklist and treat it like a checklist and that you're just going to sit and find, okay? I'm going to get the relationship between the rib mass and the pelvis mass, but I'm also going to get the rib cage with the pectoral mass, with the lat mass, the scapular mass. I'm going to work all of those. And this is where the rubber hits the road. So I'm going to use my clay brush, which you can get. It's a free class. You can get it. I don't know. You can get them off Gumroad too. But I'm going to start to separate forms, right? And that's our key here, separation. I don't know even how to spell separation. So we're separating and we're combining. And really all of this is to say is, you know, we're creating little nuggets of form. Muggets of form. We're creating little nuggets of form. We're getting to the walnuts. So I'm going to come in here. That's a little aggressive. I'm going to come in here and actually, why don't we show our scan? I'm going to come in here, and when I'm going to focus on the rib cage, I'm not going to work the pectoral mass. I'm going to work on this little area of the costal ribs. And I need to lower my depth embed because the planes are actually already pretty close. Or the form is already pretty close. And I'm just going to excavate. And when I excavate, again, I'm only focused on this. This is going to be the intercostal mass, the ribs, and then they meet the latissimus mass. And in between, you've got the serratus anterior. Okay, but step number one, what's the bottom of that? The bottom is the rib mass. So the bottom for me is going to be get the 8th rib, the 7th, the 6th, get all of those guys right there, okay? If you need to, use the standard brush to cut in. And because it's divide and conquer. Embed went to 3. Da, na, 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 da, da, da. Ba, 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 bum. Pull that form up. So you see I'm kind of carving in, and that's fine. Like this is different than traditional clay sculpting, and you got to own it. In traditional clay sculpting, carving like I'm doing right here would just be, it would be difficult, all right, because you're moving actual atoms. This is not difficult. Okay, now I'm going to use these little lines. I can't use the side lines, I don't think. Maybe. But anyways, we're going to say, all right, that looks like that's the end of that shape. So am I close to that? And if I'm not, then I'll use the move brush or I'll go back and resculpt it. Okay, let's find the bottom of the pectoral mass, right? So you can see I'm a little bit off there, right? I got a little aggressive. And that's okay. This is our version of calipers. We can't actually use calipers. So we just use the sides of the screen to help us, okay? Now look at this from a side view, and what we want to know is that's the lat mass right there. So we just want to say, all right, yeah, we need to scoot that over. So we're basically excavating all of that. So I can push that a little bit further, is ultimately what we end up with. Like that, there you go, okay? So there you go, that's our intercostal mass. I'll move it around and I'll look. I'll be like, are you matching? And you can see how that's flatter. So you can decide, yeah, no. Okay, and then I'm good. Okay, now once I've got this mass, that intercostal mass, which I'm going to leave this a little funky right now, then we might go in and we might find, I don't know, we can go in and find this abdominal mass. But we want to try to understand where the abs go, like right there. There we go. And we're thinking about the abs as a strap, much more than anything else. I really want them to lift and come down. Let's check that. I need to check the bony landmark there. All right, so I'm going to separate that. See this line I'm drawing in between them? What I'm really trying to do now is get front plane, and then a little bit of that offset. So this is going to be the external oblique, but I really want that stair step. Does that make sense? That's what the structure is all about, is that you're starting to say, hey, this is forward, that is backwards. Okay, now with that done, let's just check it from a front view, or side view, sorry. We need to push that a little bit. Perfect. Probably pull that back a tiny bit and go there. We're dividing and conquering little bits at a time. Now let's get the pectoral mass to be a little bit clearer, I think. So I'm going to come in here. This is my sternum. The sternum has a manubrium, excuse me, and then it's got the knife blade down to the xiphoid. Uh-oh. And again, we're thinking separation. Okay. So, pectoral mass. go about right there. There we go. I think I'm okay with that. Okay, I don't have any thoughts right now on, you know, there's this, and there's this. I'm not thinking that right now. What I'm thinking is as simple of a structural plane as I can possibly get. And you'll see this actually pays dividends later. Then, where's my wedge? Comes all the way there. And it's down here. So let's just change our placement a little bit. You guys still hear me? Everything's good? Yeah, mic is still good, it seems. And we'll go wedge. Wedge. There you go. I'm not thinking about the tail. I'm not thinking about the muscle. I'm thinking just here's a little triangular wedge moving down. Does this part make sense, guys? A little basic, a little simple. It's going to take a little moment for us to pick up steam, but there you go. Okay, that's the pectoral structure that I want to indicate. Actually, I need to move that down a little bit. Yeah. Okay, now what I've done is a pectoral mass separated from the sternum, separated from a little bit of the intercostal mass, which is then separated from the abdominal structure. And so now we've got lat and we've got external oblique, and we're largely done with the front. Cool? Okay. Clear out of that. So now we're going to do external oblique. I need to make sure I know where ASIS is. I'm going to have it up and down, and then yeah, it needs to move out a little bit. Cool. The external oblique can get crazy, but we're going to treat it as just a simple form in the beginning. So we're going to try to find its boundaries, right? So if we're looking at this, we say, all right, that's our, and again, these are like little walnuts of form that you start to pay attention to. You got to ignore that. You got to go, all right, that is the ab moving down. That's the boundary of the ab, okay? Now, what's that? How do I divide that into form? So maybe I look at it from above and I say, all right, well, that's the boundary, and so it's going to come out and this way. So then now my job is to this to that, right? So now that's what I'm doing. I'm going to kind of build out this nice little plane. I might build it out too much, but that's okay. Because when I sculpt, I'll press Alt and push the form back. It's not a big deal. There is some indication back here. This doing what I'm doing right now really helps. Just break that form. This is the 10th rib, basically. If you don't extend this back, even though you don't really see it, this is part of why the structure is so important. And instead of just seeing the rib moving, we actually see that's the longissimus and iliocostalis. It's part of the erector spinae. But we need to see through and be like, there is a rib there, folks. If you do that, it makes the rest of this much, much easier. And you start to see, oh, well, look, the external oblique, like actually, that it's something else. But if you look at the muscle fibers, you're like, yeah, it goes this way, it goes this way, it goes this way. And then what happens, which has happened to me more times than I can count, you're like, cool, that's the external oblique, it does this. And then you put the external oblique in there, and then you look at it from this angle and you're like, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. And it's because you prioritized muscle over form, which means you're going to miss something. And then let's put a little wedge of form right there. You learn the muscles so that your form is more educated. But your job isn't to sculpt écorchés, for a living. Your job is to sculpt people, stories, right? Notice how I'm moving, sculpting. That's called silhouette sculpting. You see this in traditional. They do this in traditional all the time. All right, there. Largely done. Check the sides that you didn't over-sculpt. Totally did over-sculpt. But it's okay. Okay, cool beans. All right. Structure, level 1, right? There you go. It looks weird. I keep looking at the monitor, but you're over here. It looks weird, but you have to do this. If you don't do this, everything else is so much harder. Even if it looks funky to you. But if you can build these structures, so much starts to make sense. So, all right, take a breath. And now if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna move a little faster. Okay, and so I'm gonna kind of crush through this. Don't worry, I'm gonna have a class that breaks this down. I'll probably start doing some YouTube content that breaks this down. But I'm gonna now build with some speed so that I'm not here all day in my now dark studio. Lat mass. Into the scapula mass. The lat mass comes down and it has the serratus anterior to some extent, but you don't need to do the serratus yet. The serratus anterior is an example of a muscle that it's kind of performed it's exhibitionary. You don't really see that guy in action a ton. But it's a fantastic detail. Okay, there we go. Check. Okay, a little bit too much over sculpting. Okay, and check it from this view. I need to check the pectoralis. You see the dun-dun-dun? I didn't check the pectoralis from a side view. And so that's a problem because most of this guy is like that. Even more. Yeah, and even that needed to get moved forward a little bit. There you go. Okay, now, there you go. That's my lat mass. The lat mass has some fingers that come down and you can start to blend and wend them with the external obliques. But then we come into this other part, lat mass, external obliques, scapular mass, right? And what's all this? So this is erector spinae. You see this in Elliot Goldfinger's book, but it's not just erector spinae. It's actually multiple muscles. And so what I'm going to do to help me here is I'm going to carve a line up like this. Okay, so what this line here is going to do is it's going to say, hey, down here, your spine and other things, up here you are rib cage. And so now, again, structure. And I'm pushing that line. The other thing that this line does is from a side view, it sets you up with a great plane. So watch this. Like here we have something and then it just kind of goes up. But as we kind of go through this, you get a much cleaner movement of ribs into the other elements. And so you'll eventually get a cleaner plane break right in there, especially as you start adding musculature. All right, so now this is going to be in between the lat right here. That's rib. It's exposed ribs. So we're going to treat that as exposed ribs right there. And then here we're going to start to sculpt a little bit stronger, a little bit straighter erector spinae muscles coming down. And you may not have seen this patterning in the beginning, but hopefully you can see it now. This is what you come to a class like this for. You come to learn these structural things that are really hard to intuit on your own. You can do it. But you know, I'm 50. Like I was learning this stuff when YouTube wasn't a thing. Like it didn't exist. You know, and I had to actually move from California to Philadelphia to go to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts to actually learn, because there was nobody. Like I don't know who was on the West Coast who could actually communicate this. Everybody was on the East Coast, and my goal was to go to the New York Academy of Art, where there was more people who could do this. They don't teach there anymore, but those people, I mean, that would have been an amazing life turn. But after that, my younger brother passed away, and I went back to California to learn digital. Actually, I got my degree in poetry, and then I learned digital at Noman and went an entirely different route. But you can't, it's really hard to pick this up on your own. So this is something where it's like I'm stopping, I'm showing you my face, let me show you what it is. This is something that you know, it's a gift I want to give you. You know, it's a gift that will always be with you, to always remember that. All right, now let's do our trapezius mass. So the trapezius mass really requires me to have this in the, like the spine established. And then I'm going to, the trapezius is really 3 sections, guys. So it comes down like this, right? And then C7 is right there. These 3 sections, this is called something, this is called something, and then that is called something. So this is called the transversal. And then I always forget, is this one the ascending? I think that's the descending. I don't know. And I don't care. But there's 3 portions. The muscle fibers change. So when you look at, and the reason why they're different portions is because the muscle fibers change. So the muscle fibers here are coming like this. The muscle fibers here are transversing, moving left to right, and then the muscle fibers down here, they're moving downwards. okay? So you have to have that in your mind, these three portions. You don't have to. If you have it in your mind, it makes this so, in my opinion, so easy. Because that's my transversal portion right there, or my ascending portion. I don't trust the doctors to name that to make sense to me. This is called the transversal portion, coming out from C7 and just going across for the most part. And then this, we don't have a lot to do here, but this comes around and comes like this to the clavicle. And ultimately that builds a nice little bridge like that. That's structure. Now, we might want to, as part of our structure, think about something like the teres major. Okay, but at this point now, if I duplicate this, now we're on to another dilemma. We have another kind of agenda, so to speak, of what we really need to capture in order to kind of take this to the next level. So where are we at? We're already at our 20 minutes. Let's look. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. I actually don't know if we're going to get into free sculpting. Maybe I alter the agenda and do that tomorrow. But this is the most important lesson I can give you guys, is to go from structure to walnuts to form. So we've got our planes. Now we're going to go in and start to find form. Okay, so let me see if I can break this. Yeah, I can. Okay, great. Sorry. Actually, when I do lives, I have this tendency to have no idea what I'm going to do because it makes it more engaging for me. So we found pectoralis, we found abs, right? These are all things that have names. And so now we're going to move from things that have names to things that we see. And this is the moment where you let go of anatomy a bit. You don't want to totally let go. It's our anchor, but we're going to let the chain out a little bit and drift a bit. So you may not know a name for what we're going to be sculpting at this point, and that's actually pretty much the point, because you need to see, and you have to have a way to see. You have to train your eye to become a detective, as opposed to depending on somebody else to feed you knowledge. You want to be cultivating knowledge, which means that you have to become curious. Sometimes learning learns the curiosity out of us. You have to learn how to feel confident looking at something and being like, what is that? I will discover it for myself, for the very first time, for myself. Yes, somebody else discovered it. Who cares, right? You discover it for yourself. So now I'm going to go in and say, well, there's a form here. There's a form here, a form here, a form here. There's a form here, a form here, a form here. These are walnuts. Look at the pectoralis. Do you see how there's like a highlight right here, and then there's a form here? Do you see the walnuts? Now, let's take this. Let me put the camera here, and I'm going to show you the inspiration of this. Again, I always forget. They show this guy's drawing, and then they don't honor him. Ladies and gentlemen, the king of walnuts. Let's look at this one. I'm going to point out the walnuts. Walnut, 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 walnut. There's another walnut. There's another walnut. There's another walnut. Walnut, 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 walnut. That's more of a lima bean. That's definitely a lima bean. There's a walnut, 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 walnut. Look at all those little chestnuts of form. Look. Do you see them? So this was a strategy. This was his trick. What was he trying to do? Just like any of us, he's trying to sell his artwork so that he can support his family and buy bread. So he's making the most dynamic work he can make to look the most amazing, to have the most visual effects, to just be a blockbuster, right? But he doesn't have visual effects team. His visual effects are that he takes a 2D piece of paper and he makes it look three-dimensional. That's the first visual effect, right? The first visual effect is probably the 2D hand on the wall. Then the next visual effects, how do you make this look like it has illusion, has depth, has volume and form, right? And so his trick was little walnuts, just always finding the round things. Okay, but it's not just him, although, you know, he's our king. Where is this drawing? Oh yeah. Look at all them walnuts. Look at his clavicle. His clavicle has not one, not two, but 5 walnuts. Look at these abs. These aren't even abs. I don't even know what the hell these things are. But he's rounding and treating all of these as separate. And that's the trick. Because it looks crazy to our eye, right? But, I mean, it looks insanely, it looks like it has form, right? Now, remember, Leonardo's note to Michelangelo was, your drawings look like a bag of walnuts, dude. You don't have any real skill. And so, walnut, walnut, walnut. Look at these little walnuts of form. More subtle. Much more subtle, but come over here to the background. Womp, 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 womp. You see how he's adding in these like little highlights, and he's treating like everything has these separations. This is how Michelangelo created 3D effect. And if you've been to the Sistine Chapel, I mean, you know, it's hard nowadays because it's packed, right? It's packed all the time. But, you know, and you cannot stop. They get very upset. So you're sitting there looking, trying not to hit the guy in front of you, and you're so far away. But you can imagine, you know, back in the day, somebody comes in from the village, just survived a raid, lost all of their family. They're the only ones, and they were living hand to mouth if they could even get food there. They come in to Rome, look upwards, and there is this thing that is literally just dripping off of the flat surface. It looks like it's opening up to the sky and to the heavens. It's got this beautiful 3D volume. It looks real, right? That's his trick. And you can kind of see it in some of his drawings. So Leonardo was kind of right. He's a dick, but it's kind of right, you know? Look for the walnuts in Michelangelo's work next. Okay, I don't know why that took forever to figure out how to do. And so we're going to, in honor of our guy here, we're going to find some walnuts. Sound like a plan? Let's close this so I'm not inundated. And am I still live? Yes, perfecto. And we're still recording. And my audio is still good. And my stream bit rate is still good. It's actually higher. Okay, good. Okay. Now, let's get into ZBrush. I'll do this really hardcore way first, I think. I don't do this all the time, but it's not a bad idea to just come in and just draw where you think a form is, right? And so I'm drawing this form, and as I do it, I'm like, yeah, you're off, Ryan. But it's good. It's good practice. So maybe define some boundaries first, where it's like, all right, so, and I'm using dam standard. There you go, right? So if I can kind of anchor it, voila. And then there's a little form right there. I'm gonna add that in, but that's okay, where is that form? Okay. There is actually 3 walnuts for, this is what Henrique put in. And then, you know, you can see there's actually little walnuts right in here as well. Walnut, walnut. You can get a little walnut in here. We can do a little bit of work in there. All right. So we've got a little bit of it drawn in, right? Does that make sense? Now, it's not gonna, you can't always see these in the beginning, but you do your best to just imagine them as time goes on. And so now then, once we've got this, we have to maintain the You got to maintain the structural integrity of the areas that you indicated earlier. But we can come in and start to exaggerate. So I'll carve in with the standard brush, and it's not a bad idea to return depth to 5. Oh, it is kind of a bad idea. Let's set embed back to 3. And I'm going to actually, with the standard brush, I don't do this. I usually make this much more low-key. But just in the interests of explaining this concept, I'm coming in with the standard brush and I'm just demarcating these things more clearly. Okay, cool. Like that, right? So I'm just going to give him some tumors. And then let's go in and start to find some of these walnuts. And you'll find more walnuts as you go. And the walnuts will change shape slightly. All right, sorry if I'm stopping to talk, if I'm no longer talking. Mic still working. Thank God it hasn't shut itself off yet. This, to me, is one of the, it's when people ask, Ryan, I'm at a plateau, how do I get better? This is my answer. This exercise forces you to think about form differently and to open your curiosity in a different way. Okay, and I don't feel like the walnuts are very well described here, so I'm going to redo this center part. But what do you think? Think I got some walnuts in there, some crazy form? Maybe look from below to just make sure, you know. Now, what you're kind of noticing, what I hope one of the things that you're noticing is that this is kind of like contrast in Photoshop. So what I mean by that is, let's go and look at this. And I don't know if you guys know this, but inside of Photoshop you can actually adjust. Not Photoshop, inside of ZBrush you can adjust. All right, so what we're doing is let's turn the brightness down. We're just trying to take the individual forms and make them seem bigger. And then through that, we're going to start to try to understand them a little bit, right? Try to make sense out of all of it. So let's go back and I'll go into this one. So you should, you know, I mean, I can kind of see. It's like, yes, yes, yeah, there's something. Maybe it's not, like maybe I might do it differently, but like it matches up, right? The chest, that's a crap job. I phoned that in. So I need to do better. Okay, I'm having a problem here. Let's do linear. Yes, that's good. Okay, that's the problem. I mean, heck, you could actually just do what our man did, and then just add a bunch of like little spiraling forms without even being clear what was going on. I mean, the guy obviously knew anatomy, but he knew enough to just go crazy. Okay, there. That's a little bit better. And then now we'll make sense out of this. And then I'll have to prove to you guys that this actually works, because as a few of you noted, you're like, I ain't never seen this before, Ryan. And that is actually my specialty. It's one of the significant loves of my life is finding new ways to see and do things. And being one of the first guys to really go out and train in ZBrush, it was like just pure joy to just talk to traditional people and be like, yeah, this is how you can think about it, and come up with new ways and a new language, which I'm still doing to this day. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how people didn't think to actually put clay over the top of 3D prints. Like, I spent $5,000 on a CNC machine because I was like, that's so weird, Ryan. Why would you do that? And it turned out to be the best thing ever. Oh my God, I am so hungry. I forgot to eat again today. I got so worried today after yesterday's technical snafus. Still doing good? Yes, okay. Look from above, check. Check that everything still fits. You're going to have some dips, some alterations, but it all still needs to fit. And if you need to, then just turn split off and check, right? And this will help you in time just be like, okay, yeah, I overplayed that. So whenever I make adjustments like this, like I'm doing right now, I will actually make the adjustments and then go back and be like, all right, what did I do? Okay, there you go. What does this teach me? Teaches me, it's actually a very important thing it teaches me. Notice how flat that is. So all of this is along a flat plane. And then as we go up, you should notice that it kind of transitions, and this whole rim, in fact, let's do it this way. There is a rim right here that kind of is recessed inwards, and then the form kind of moves out from there. So if we look at that from a side view, do you see how that plane is, the manubrium is actually forward to the pectoral muscle mass, and that's not accurate. What's accurate is that the manubrium is pushed in and the pectoral mass is going to swell out. So there's lots to learn, lots to think about as you're kind of going through. Okay, so now let's go. And just make a little bit of sense out of this manubrium. The problem with this manubrium area here is it's not symmetrical. So I'm turning symmetry off. Okay, there we go. All right. Now let's duplicate this, and for the love of all that is holy, please save this file, Ryan. I do not know what I was thinking. Please don't crash. Knox, what do I think about turning off perspective? I don't think it's a bad idea. I'll say that. But it's a little weird training-wise. So I leave it on. Either way, you have to reconcile perspective when you get out into when you move this into the real world. Okay. Checking in with comments. All right, so hopefully we don't have a ton more time. Hopefully I'm able to communicate this next few steps clearly. And I say hopefully, not because I don't want to spend more time, but because efficiency shows up in how long it takes, right? Am I struggling or not? And so if you find yourself struggling, one of the things I want you to think about is try to go back in your process or your undo history and see where did it go wrong? And instead of continuing to struggle, go back and do over. This is something called deep practice, which you can Google and learn more about. But sometimes struggling is counterproductive. And you need to just drop the bad habit, go back to where it was good, and try to build a good habit and a good process. All right? So now, stream is still okay, and comments are still good. So let's see, how do we want to build this? So there's a couple of methods. One, we could use the rake brush I have right now, and the embed is right there. And we can start to kind of craft this a little bit. But really one of the most, this could work. I'm not going to do this though today. And you'll see me in most of my older tutorials, I'll use the rake brush a lot because it's kind of like my way of seeing the world. Instead, I'm going to shift my tactics. I'm going to use the clay brush, go with a soft alpha. And I'm going to just start to, instead of really affecting the top of it, I'm going to start to build the space in between. And where's my embed? I'm going to set my embed at 1, by the way. With your embed set at 1, you can actually go through, and there's you can smooth out a lot of that. But let's try this. And if this doesn't, in fact, where are we at? Okay, good. This is totally fresh. If this doesn't work, then we'll try the other path with the rake brush. But mostly what I'm doing, you might not even be able to see. But that's a good, what I just did right there was a good little demo. So I'm gonna do it all again. We're brushing along the surface, and I'll press Alt, and I'll brush across to kind of control the curvature. And then I'll let go of Alt to build some up if I get too crazy. I'll do the same thing here. Pressing Alt. And then I'll I'll kind of brush up to one, brush up to the other, brush up from the other side, up from the other, and then you can just kind of blend them. And then they kind of disappear a little bit, but they're still there. And that starts to look much more like the soft tonal shape changes that we've got in the final. Of course, you could also smooth it out. That works as well, right? And it maintains the integrity of them. So either approach works. In the interest of time, I think I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try this. See if it gives me the results I need in my shortened time span. It has a danger. There is a real danger to this, and one of those dangers is that you didn't really make your form large enough in the beginning. But in this case, I did. And now I can go through and just kind of work on this. Has the added difficulty that I've kind of messed up form a little bit. So when you do it the other way, you get a chance to redo this on a real kind of granular level. Because ultimately, when you sculpt like this, you sculpt, many times. Like it should be something where it's something you do quite a bit to eventually get there. And all the guys from the Florence Academy, and guys like Robert Bodum, Eric on YouTube, like these are important sculptors showing you, the long look at form. I'm not showing you the long look in that way. I'm showing you constructive kind of methodologies. Just because, that fits my particular predilection and the things that I love. Not because one's right or wrong. That would be silly, in my view. I helped build ZBrush back in the day, and there's no reason for me to leave ZBrush. Like, people ask, why do you print and then lay clay over the top? Are you trying to simulate clay? And it's clay's a part of my process, as is ZBrush, as is, lots of tools. So I'm really just trying not to lose touch with any of them. They all have a place. This phase also is kind of like a coloring phase. Where you're trying to match color to some extent. There's some difficulties. If you were doing this with clay and putting little splotches of clay down, it's easier. It's not easier. I mean, all of that takes time. But in ZBrush, the clay brush has this kind of, I don't know, it's a little weird with some elements of form. So I can't get exactly the form I want right now. I have to really make sure that I'm thinking about this and going in terms of like steps. I got to stay away from that because that's the section where I break symmetry. And also, when you do more than just smooth, right? Like smooth is all fine and dandy, but that's not the final look. It's cool. But as I go in here now, I'm actually finding like, okay, so that looks like that's muscle, but this is definitely bone. So how do I separate these? How do I get a sense of that there's actually bone and muscle? This is really, like, this is what we want. I want a sense that there's some hard bone right there. And look, there's a form here, there's a form there, right? So now I got to be thinking about this. And I'm always kind of, the thing I love about this method is that you're building convexity, which we talked about earlier. Convexity is life. If somebody has like this dent in their head, your general assumption is they're dead. Like that's the end of that. A concavity in your head is just not expected. So now you can see, hopefully you can see, I'm breathing a bit more life into the walnuts. And this is the difference between Henrique, I think that's his name, and Michelangelo. Michelangelo's, you can't see the walnuts, you know, no matter what Leonardo says. You know, you can't. Not like you can see in our other guy, right? And so now I'm crawling the surface. And, you know, this is, you guys are watching, like, this is a free webinar streaming on ZBrush. I'm under time constraints. I'd be under time constraints in the live class as well. This is something that, you know, takes time and should take time. You should be sculpting from all kinds of different angles and then making mistakes and being like, oops, I missed that angle, and when I miss that angle, I miss form. There's something I didn't see. I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon, guys. We're at 2 hours now. Yeah. So I have got to eat or I'm literally just going to pass out. But you can see me kind of trying now to blend these, turn these walnuts into wine. I don't know what walnut wine would taste like, probably pretty bad, so let's not say that. What do we turn walnuts into? My kids are allergic to nuts, so... All right, I do want to show you one more thing. So, all right, there's me kind of crushing through the surface a little bit more. I really wish I had time to come up here, you know, because there's so much beautiful, subtle form in this area, and small little plane changes that can be hard to, you know, totally get your head around. Just as you build, remember, like I'm carving in, but make sure to always build convexity. So anytime you're pressing Alt, you're going to want to go back over that surface without Alt pressed and just build the convexity back into it. That's really, really important for this to work. Okay, almost done. Okay, that's a little bit better. I'm going to duplicate that now. And let's save this as number 2. All right, how are we doing? Whew. How are you guys doing? My audio is still going. And it looks like everything's good. Walnut liqueur, that would be the idea. All right, it's saved. Now, a couple of things to show off. Once you've got form like this, you know, I've kind of mapped that surface a little bit. I kind of love this stroke, right? And I'm a big fan of texture. But I can come in with the rake brush now with it set to 2. And you can do some real beautiful things, kind of raking across the surface. This is something that clay sculptors will do. You come in and you rake the surface, and you know, you just get a finer and finer rake. So in ZBrush, I can actually just go into alpha, and I can just alpha tile this twice. That was twice, right? Yeah. And it'll just make a finer rake, and then probably lower the embed to 1. It's a little noisy though, you know, it's not like this in, so let's set the embed to 0. Yeah, so it's not the same as the real world. That's too much noise for me. Long strokes when you need to. But we've moved from structure into these walnuts, into now starting to weave them all together to create some of the magic. Okay. Turn symmetry off and work this a little bit. What do you guys think? What is something that you picked up out of this session today? Tell me something that you think you've learned that might help you in your sculpting or your art journey. Okay, lots more work to do, but we went from structure, like here, let's just go through the various phases that we did. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. So, I didn't show you guys this, but it's in the class. We had our planes, that's where we started. Then we went in and we found some of the mess. And so let's actually just focus on these. We started to find the structure. We found the walnuts. And then we started to build the form. Now, ideally, what you're learning or what I'm giving you in this process is a tool to discover the surface of your model. Right? And so if we switch over here to this camera, now, yeah, it's a little off screen. So even though this is kind of covered with clay, finding all of these little nuggets of form, a little bit of that rib coming out in here, like that starts to really sell, you know, the hunger to some extent, the pain. You know, which is what I'm trying to get this guy to ultimately represent. I don't know if the musculature of the arm really fits, but I do like some elements of the emaciation, but also the muscle, the bodybuilding aspect of it. So, what'd you learn? Let's go through this. Okay. Self-awareness. Malem, I really like this process. Makes me see things differently. Notice the forms. Good. Render Boy 3D. The importance of walnuts. That it takes nuts to nail anatomy. Rhythm and walnuts. Nuts and form, which is a comment that's held for review. Obviously, I learned about nuts and form. Yep. YouTube doesn't know what to do with that. Start simple. Convexity is life. The masses divide the latissimus, oblique, and scapula. That was magic. Okay, good. So that's the structure. So the planes and the structure. Good. Patience. Trust the process. Sometimes I rush. Let's see. Integrate the nuts in my practice. That comment is also held for review. Nuts, importance and relevance of classical traditional artists. Yes. Not neglecting planes, 100%. Compared to other stuff, it's helping you simplify form, says Alexander. Not thinking in muscles origins, but thinking in structure, planes, and life. Fantastic. Okay, really helps me. Harshit, really helps me see the planes as I struggle to see them. I used to just see muscles. Good. Which one is best? The clay buildup is the best brush. My clay brush is actually a modification of clay buildup. And clay buildup is the clay brush with buildup on, which is in the modifier section. No, it's in samples, I think. So brush, samples, you should see it there, wherever. Anatomy. Way to go, Pedro. That one's also held for review. That one we have to show. The others I'll figure out. Venn Sculpt's curiosity is key if you want to keep improving quickly. Discover things for yourself, 100%. And look at other sources. So one of the most important sources for me, of course, Paul Richet's foundational, Elliot Goldfinger, foundational. But they only get you here. Plastic surgery, they got words for stuff that anatomists and fine artists don't even think about, right? Retaining ligaments for the face. You can't understand the face unless you understand retaining ligaments. As somebody gets older, you have retaining ligaments here, underneath the eye, retaining ligaments back there, and the skin hangs over retaining ligaments. Plastic surgeons, they have that, right? And then RenderBoy 3D. Seriously, I love this process. Usually anatomy experts start to go down a rabbit hole of technicality, which I have gone down. And I always feel I lose people. But anatomy serves a purpose. And that purpose can't be learning because that's just an endless hole. It needs to serve story. It needs to serve capacity, your ability to just create, from imagination. This is 100% from imagination, right? And I think there's things wrong with it, but I don't care, right? And that's a good place to be. There's stuff wrong with Rodin. If you look at the anatomy, he fudged the crap out of stuff, but he was looking beyond anatomy. And that's the purpose of anatomy is like raising a child. You raise the child so that they leave you. And that's anatomy is to provide that foundation so that you no longer need it to some extent. It's on my mind because my kids are older now. So, Angel, how do we control not increasing the nut size? That's what we have to do. It's the work, right? So, we'll see if I cover this again later. I forget what tomorrow is. But the class, we open up live classes and we open up anatomy class tomorrow for, again, another 5 weeks. And we're going to probably keep doing these launches until June. In June, I think I'll be fine because I still want to redo the torso, but I have to do the figure sculpting because I found doing the figure sculpting class gave purpose to the anatomy. And it also shortens certain things. You don't have to learn all about the iliocostalis. We can kind of condense that. So I should be done with everything and come June. Tomorrow, we go live. Everything opens. If you want to take a live class, it's open. If you want to get into the anatomy classes, the torso, the head, the arms, the leg, they'll all be open tomorrow. All right? So, thank you, Imaginik. Let's go through here. Imaginik, using the walnuts to create forms after the planes was brilliant. Thank you. And then taking artistic liberty while respecting. Yes, absolutely. Yes, we want anatomy to be unhinged from the books. Side Shave Laura. Anatomy knowledge was to prove to my cousins this schooling is just as respectable as doctors. Yes. Although, funny thing, my daughter, when she was younger, and I was younger, we were in India, and I had her by the hands and I was swinging her, right? And she just started crying out in pain. And so we went to a doctor down the street, and the doctor was like, oh, she's going to be in a cast for 3 weeks or 3 months or something like that. And we were like, we're just tourists visiting at this point. So my anatomy knowledge and YouTube enabled me to realize that she just had popped her radius out of the socket, which is painful. And there's a simple exercise to do it. It's just literally, I think it's like this, and you just, some variation of that. Pops right back in. So after my wife was done yelling at me like, you're killing our child, she had to charge me I charged her $150 for the for the work. You know, I'm an expensive doctor, though not educated. Okay. Teresa, would you ever do a live class or about how to choose a pose? When I get better at that, maybe. Is the torso 3D a scan or free? It's part of the course. It'll be in there. And last, I'm a little confused on the difference between live session I did and the new one, and how do they compare? Well, that's actually the perfect question to end on. So the course, anatomy course, is for, with the videos all there, they're ready for you at any time, and they're what we would call asynchronous, or you just on demand, whenever. But the live classes, those are 5 weeks live, and usually what we do is we pick a model. And sometimes people can vary, but we just pick a model, and over 5 weeks we make that model. So most likely this, I saw the most success when we did this, the young Michelangelo that you'll see on some of the marketing in the pages. It's that plaster of this guy kind of bent over like that. I saw so much growth in artists then, so I'm probably going to do that one again. And then every live class, it's just a different one. And then, you know, I'm learning new ways to communicate this. So when I did the leg, I learned about how we could simplify the lower leg into 4 planes. And the lower leg is a painful thing. So if you can simplify it, you know, please. So that was like great knowledge I just happened upon. And so I'm always finding new things. The walnuts, that literally happened 2 months ago. I figured out that that was one of the things that could help you kind of disconnect from anatomy, but still stay there. So this is all brand new. I'm figuring this all out, documenting all of this. It'll eventually go in a book, and all that. And so that goes live tomorrow. Books: Elliot Goldfinger, Paul Richer, The Godfather, Gottfried Bomis. These are your essentials from the fine art foundational perspective. Then all the other books are derivative. Stephen Rogers Peck might be really useful too. But after that, it gets derivative. Anatomy for Sculptors, they're not derivative. They have a different function, but they're planes, they're structural breakdowns. Like you can't beat them. But in order for you to level up, you have to leave the fine art anatomy books alone, and you got to go over into time. I think it's Times, General Musculoskeletal Atlas. And that book is like, I mean, you can't beat it. That's the best. So there we go. Best insertion origins. All right, guys. See you tomorrow. Thank you for being here. I didn't even check. Let me switch over to this camera. I didn't even check how many people were here at the event, but let's say we have, okay, great. Yeah, about 150 at one point. And then we're doing good. So thank you, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, ciao.